is the Happy Scientist Podcast. Each episode is designed to make you more focused, more productive, and more satisfied in the lab. You can find us online at bitesizebio.com/happy scientist. Your hosts are Kenneth Vogt, founder of the executive coaching firm Vera Claritas, and Dr. Nick Oswald, PhD, bioscientist, and founder of Bitesize Bio.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Scientist podcast from Bitesize Bio. If you want to become a happier, healthier and a more productive scientist, you are in the right place. I'm Nick Oswald, the founder of bitesizebio.com, and with me is the driving force of this podcast, Kenneth Vogt. I have worked with Ken for over 7 years now, with him as my business colleague and mentor, and I knew that his expertise could help a lot of researchers, so we decided to start this podcast together. In these sessions, we will hear mostly from Ken on principles that will help shape you for a happier and a more successful career. And along the way, I'll pitch in with points from my personal experience as a scientist and from working with Ken. Today, we'll be talking about how to install and use habits for maximum impact. In episodes 1 to 9 of this podcast, we talked about the foundational principles of human needs, core mindsets, and charisma factors, which we will refer to in this and all future episodes. So if you find this episode useful, please go back and listen to episodes 1 to 9 to get an understanding of these life-changing concepts. So let's bring in the man himself. Kenneth, how are you today?
Doing great, Nick. How are you? Excellent. Well, today is, as you noted, we're going to be talking about habits and specifically how to install habits and make sure that you get the most out of them. Now, one thing about habits that's interesting is most of us have developed most of our habits without really consciously trying to do so. It's just kind of happened. In some cases, you've just been fortunate. You've accidentally built some good habits. But every one of us has accidentally built some bad habits too. So we're going to talk about how to get some good habits in there on purpose. We're also going to talk how to get some bad habits out. Because in some cases, no matter how many new good habits you add, if you don't get rid of some bad habits, you're going to still have trouble. And we don't want you to have trouble. We want everything to go great for you. So, one thing to think about, sometimes people are intimidated by the idea of a new habit. And they think, oh man, it's going to be so much work to put something in place that'll actually make a difference in my life. But let's just think of this in terms of simple math. If you were to improve 1% a day for the next year, how much better off would you be at the end of the year? And you might think, well, let's see, 1% a day times 365 days, that's 3.65 times better. But no, it's not addition. It's multiplication. So you'd actually be almost 38 times better if you would improve 1% a day. Now, that's not asking much. You can deal with 1% a day. And what that means too is that if you're improving your habits, you don't have to be perfect. You just got to get a little better every day. Just take it up a notch every day. Now, the beauty of this is that when you develop good habits on purpose, they can build. The downside is the same thing works for bad habits. If you have bad habits, they will build too. And the thing about it is sometimes the impact isn't obvious. Because again, if you're only 1% worse today, you may not hardly even notice. But the impact can build up quickly over time. So it is important that we pay attention to both sides of this. What are we doing that's a good habit? What are we doing that's a bad habit? And I like to think also in terms of just those words, good and bad. It's not so. I'm not making a moralistic statement about your habits. What we're talking about is it a habit that gets you where you want to go, or is it a habit that gets in the way of where you want to go? So you've got to think of it in terms of the outcomes. Think about, is this a helpful habit? Is this an unhelpful habit? Is this a habit that takes me forward? Is this a habit that takes me backward? You could think of it as good habits are friends, bad habits are enemies. I thought I heard some breathing back there, Nick. I wondered if you had something you wanted to add.
I'm still breathing. I would definitely. The way that I like to look at this is as kind of what you said. In a way, the 1% is just a direction, isn't it? As a vector, like you said in the last episode.
Yeah.
It's basically what direction are you moving in? Are you kind of continuously making your habits better on average, or are you continually making them worse and allowing yourself to spiral downwards? And yeah, and I think that's helpful as well, because I don't know about, well, I do know about you. You don't do this, but most people, including myself, do this thing where we kind of make a surge to try and improve lots of habits at the same time, and then get demotivated when things, it gets better for a while, then it gets worse, and then then that downward spiral continues. And so it's about getting out of that kind of, for me anyway, it's about getting out of that mindset of trying to really push hard to make a massive advance and just keep improving slowly. Right. And even if it goes backwards, just get back on the bike and keep going, a little bit better.
Yeah, you can't even worry about that. You're going to have backwards days. That'll happen. But if you're, as you say, if your vector's pointed forward, you're going to come right back to it after that.
Yeah.
One of the things that spins around this all over the place is time. Time is this thing that we're constantly encountering, and in reference to our habits, good habits will turn time into a friend. But for most of us, we don't see time as a friend at all. We think time is an enemy. Time is working against us. We're always working to beat the clock. And that is because of bad habits. That's why time is bothering you. It's because of bad habits. If you had good habits, you wouldn't be worried about it at all. You wouldn't worry about 1% improvement in any given time period is like a day. Like, oh, that's no big. That's fine. It's perfectly fine. But when you have bad habits that are beating you down, 1% improvement is not good enough. I need 50% improvement, 100% improvement. I can't take it anymore. And we have a different mindset about it. But the idea here is you can take a look at how you feel about time, and it will tell you the net impact of your habits. Because when time is your enemy, it's because it keeps crushing down on you. Things keep happening. Bad things keep happening. Things don't get done. All the things you worry about are constantly present. That's what happens when you are at the mercy of bad habits. And I say, again, bad habits. The habits that are not getting you the outcomes you want. But when you're getting the outcomes you want, time is awesome. You won't be bothered by it at all. Now let's think about another thing that happens in reference to time with habits. And I'm sure you've noticed this. Bad habits offer an immediate payoff. If I eat that ice cream, it tastes good right now. Good habits offer a delayed payoff. If I go to the gym and work out hard for an hour, I'll look better next week, next month. Yeah, that right now you look like a sweaty mess. But, and I mean, this is a good way to notice whether or not something is going to help you with your outcomes or not. And here's the thing. Getting a good payoff now is not the problem. It's something that grabs you because it gives you a good payoff now at a cost that comes later. Bad habits demand a heavy price in the future. Good habits collect their price up front, but they have the payoff in the future. So you have to learn this thing called delayed gratification. That is a step into maturity, folks. Children want everything right now. They can't wait. It drives them crazy. We've all seen it. In fact, we've all done it. We've all been children. Like, oh man, I can't believe it. We're gonna go to the park after school, and I can't believe it's still 10 o'clock. I can't believe it's still 10:05. I can't believe it's still 10:10. because we're just aching for this thing. We want it right now. Well, if you can put it off a little bit, you could have a positive anticipation, like, oh, great, after school today we're going to the park. It's going to be fantastic. And you can still enjoy your day and still be engaged in your day just by having a somewhat different outlook on when the payoff is. Man, go ahead, Nick.
Just to go back to what you talked about previously about the 1%, I think this is a great way to look at this delayed gratification thing, because for me, it's really easy to get wrapped up in, oh man, I just do this instant gratification thing all the time. And then you feel bad about yourself, so you do some instant gratification to make yourself feel better.
Exactly.
And then you just feel like you're never going to get anywhere. But actually, if you just set your goal to not solve that instant gratification problem, but just to chip away at it 1% a day, and that can be something tiny like, you were going to have a piece of chocolate. I don't know. Say you 3 times a day you take instant gratification in the form of a piece of chocolate. Well, you just start chipping it away. Right? I'm not going to have that one time, and I'm going to allow myself to have it the other 2 times. And then you become stronger, and it's easier to get rid of the second one and the third one as you get stronger and stronger, rather than thinking you have to climb that whole mountain at the same time.
Exactly. And we're going to break this down. We're going to talk about how to form a good habit in specifics. We're also going to talk about how to break a bad habit in specifics, and we're going to give you a lot of things you can use here, a lot of tools and a system that works. So if you felt like, man, I've never been able to install a good habit. I've wanted to, stop eating popcorn in front of the TV, but I don't know, I just never stop, or I've really wanted to get up a half hour earlier and go running in the morning, but I can't seem to get started, This is a common problem for everybody. And if you know anybody that has good habits, and you look at them and say, yeah, man, it must just be easier for them. It's not. It's not any easier for them. They have a better system than you have. They've got a method to install a good habit. And you've probably also noticed, too, that some people have really great habits in a limited area of their life. And then in another area of their life, they're a train wreck because they haven't transferred over the system. So, you have people that are very good at making money, and yet they drink themselves into stupidness. How did they develop that terrible habit while developing these other great habits that other people just would do anything to have? Well, it's a matter of having some awareness of how it happens. Sometimes we have systems that are unconscious, and so we don't, since we don't know they're there, they don't happen on purpose. They happen by accident, or they happen arbitrarily. And, we notice the outcome, but we don't know how we got there. Well, we're going to talk about how specifically to get there. And these are things that are universal. There's nothing about any of this that's like, oh, you have to be special, or you have to have certain qualities. No, this is what works for humans. So you can look at these things. Parts of it will probably be more appealing to you than other parts of it. That's fine. Use what works and get the job done. So we're going to start with what it takes to form a good habit. And there are 4 things that you have to do. And we'll talk about each of them in detail, but I want to hit the 4 up front just to give you the foundation for this. If you want to form a good habit, the first thing you have to do is you got to make it obvious. You got to make it obvious to do the right thing that'll get you the outcome that you're seeking. Next thing you have to do is you got to make it attractive. Because just because it's obvious doesn't mean it looks good to do. Doesn't mean you think, oh boy, I can't wait to do that. The third thing is you got to make it easy. Because it could be obvious, it could be attractive, but if it's too hard, you won't do it. And the fourth thing is you have to make it satisfying. And remember, we talked about how bad habits tend to give you an immediate payoff and good habits make you wait. So you gotta do something to make it feel good now as you're forming the habit. So let's let's take these apart one by one. So as far as making something obvious, so let's pick out an example. Let's say that you want to start going to the gym every morning. All right. Well, the first thing you can do is give yourself some visual clues. So in the evening before you go to bed, lay out your workout clothes. So when you get up in the morning, the first thing you see is, oh, there's my workout clothes. That's right, I'm supposed to go to the gym this morning. That's the first step. The next thing you do is use a method like this. We say, when X happens, I will do Y. So on automatic mode, when I get up in the morning, I go straight to grabbing my gym bag. I make a connection there that you don't have to think about, so that it's automatic. When I brush my teeth, the next thing I do is put on my running shoes. Just an automatic pattern that's always tied together. Where I'm not going to think about this. I'm not going to make a decision about this. I'm not going to brush my teeth and then go, okay, should I go running or not? No, I brush my teeth. I put on my running shoes. End of story. You don't give yourself any way out in between. You make it obvious, and this can be true for anything. If you want to have a habit of eating better, and you go, okay, well, every time I take a bite of something on my plate that I really enjoy, I take a bite of vegetables that I might not enjoy as much. You make it a deal with yourself. Every time I have that piece of steak, I will also have a piece of broccoli. Not just eat steak. Oh, I don't have any room for broccoli. Oh, well, what can I do?
So I had a way that I trained myself to get, the X, when X happens, I will do Y, to get up when my alarm went off, was that during the day one day I set the alarm and lay in bed. I wasn't sleeping, just lay in bed. The alarm went, I got up, and I repeated it about 30 times so that I got, and I did that over a few days. And it was almost like you train yourself to respond, so that you just kind of do that as soon as you hear that, you associate the alarm with getting out of bed. And that worked for me anyway. It helped to tip the balance to, I'm not saying it's perfect. And it just reminded me of it, that maybe I need to top it up again. But it certainly helped tip the balance for me into, okay, when this alarm goes, I move. And and that's one way to do it.
Right. So let me put this in a different framework. You got to pick the right time for making choices versus decisions. And you might think, well, those are synonyms. Why choices, decisions, the same thing? But actually, it's not. See, a decision is a data-driven activity. A decision is something you do where you gather information, and then based on the information, you make a decision. So I'm going to make dinner tonight. All right, well, I'll look in the refrigerator. What's available here to cook with? All right, well, based on what's here, I guess I'm going to make chicken breast and some cauliflower. All right, that's a decision. A choice is different. A choice is merely choosing among your options. See, looking in the refrigerator, those aren't your only options. For dinner, you could go to the grocery store and buy something else. You could go to a restaurant. You could choose to fast tonight. Those are all within your option. So a choice is something that you do that is just choosing from among your options, where you're not being affected by the data available to you. You're opening yourself up to more data. Now, you could see the positive points of each of these things and the negative points of each of these things. Decisions become bad when you have limited information. So, and decisions don't allow you to rely on intuition. They're looking for data, and the data is in charge of the outcome. Whereas choices are very open-ended. I could do anything that's possible. If it's available as a choice, I can choose it. Well, that can allow you to make some really bad choices sometimes. Like when all the evidence says do X and you go, I can still do Y. So, all the evidence says I should go to the gym, or I could just stay in bed for an hour. So you got to pick your times, when to make choices and when to make decisions. And so the obvious question is, well, how do I choose? This is weird. You have to make a choice about whether or not it's choices or decisions. But this kind of drives to the point. Choices are things that you should make as they're the application of the values that you want to live. Decisions are more the day-to-day, things I'm going to do in support of the values that I already chose. So you shouldn't make a lot of choices, but the ones you make should really matter. They should be important to you. And you shouldn't change your choices very often. Because remember, because you're choosing among your options, choices could just bounce all over the place. You could just, one day I'm going to be someone who regularly exercises. The next day I'm never exercising again. The next day I'll exercise when I feel like it. The next day I'll exercise when the calendar says I must. You can drive yourself crazy with that. So better to pick a position, choose it, and then after that, make your decisions based on your choices. That's part of the data. Well, since I'm somebody who goes to the gym 3 times a week, and I've only been there once this week, and there's only 2 more days left this week, I guess I better go to the gym today. That's a decision now. You took the data, and the data supported taking a particular action. So weigh things in that way. Start thinking in terms of decisions versus choices, and you'll realize then developing a good habit is a choice. Developing bad habits often is a result of decisions. So I don't want to denigrate decisions like they only lead to bad outcomes, because they certainly don't. In fact, they can be very supportive of good choices that you've made previously. But you've got to recognize the difference between when it's time to choose and when it's time to decide. Another thing about forming good habits is be specific about things. Get detailed. If you got it in your head that I'm going to start eating better, well, you're not going to develop much of a good habit out of that. You got to get specific. You got to say, okay, from now on, I'm not going to have more than 2,000 calories a day. Or from now on, I am going to eat vegetables at every meal. From now on, I'm going to have a salad before every meal. From now on, I'm not bringing any high-fat salad dressings into the house. You get specific about the things that you're going to do, and that's where you're developing this good habit. And the whole thing about how it is going on a diet is always a bad idea in your mind, because it says this is a temporary change where we're going to tolerate suffering for a period of time, and then we're going to go back to, air quotes, normal. That's not a habit. Whereas if you really want to have an effect, you want to say, okay, I'm going to change my eating habits. I'm going to start cooking more at home. I'm going to stop buying packaged foods. I'm going to start eating more vegetables, and I'm going to, and again, I'm not pressing any particular kind of diet here, or any particular kind of exercise regime, or whatever, whatever you're feeling drawn to, but get specific about it so you know exactly what you're doing, because it's really easy to talk yourself out of things and say, well, I know I said I would run, but I did walk, all the way from the car to the mall today. And we start to give ourselves all these outs because, well, that's exercise. Yeah, well, if you'd been specific about what you mean by exercise, you wouldn't be trying to trick yourself that way. Okay, let's talk a bit about now making it attractive. So you've made it obvious. You've got vegetables. You bought them at the grocery store, and now you have them at home. You've got your workout gear. You've got your toothbrush and toothpaste ready for brushing your teeth every day, or whatever it is you're going to do. Now make it attractive. So the idea of making it attractive is to take an action that that you want to do, a new habit you want to install, let me put back up here. Take a habit that you want to do and couple it with a habit you need to do. So the need to do is the one, like a new habit you're trying to install. So I'll use an example. Let's say that you have been finding I don't brush my teeth every day. Okay, well then now take it something you want to do. Like I put my contacts in every day. I really want to do that. I want to be able to see. So whenever I put in my contacts, I brush my teeth. You couple these two things, something that you want to do coupled with something that you need to do. And it's just a way of making, again, an automatic connection, so you're no longer making a decision. Remember, you've made the choice now to connect these two things. But it becomes attractive because the notion of going out today without your contacts probably sounds pretty undesirable. It's like, man, I don't even know if I can drive to the office this way. So you're never going to not do certain things, and take those things and couple them together. So you know what you need to do, and you could look at let's look at something here in the lab, Nick. I'm gonna see if we could pull out an example there. Is there an example you could think of where there's something that you'd want to do, that would be easy to do, that you could couple with something that you need to do?
Good question. You could, one habit that you have to form in the lab, or it helps you to form in the lab, is if you update your notes regularly instead of leaving it to the end of the day. You update your notes as you do them, rather than leaving it to the end of the day. So you could say something like, when I, the thing that you want to do is you want to go and, I don't know, check your messages or something. You're at the bench, it's time to check messages or stop for a coffee or something like that. Then at that point you will, once you've done that, then you'll update your notes so that you put in you're at the bench, you need regular breaks anyway to just get away, clear your head, then come back. When you take those regular breaks, before you get started again, you will write the notes up. That's one example you could use.
I like that. You reminded me of a scene in the movie Avatar where the main character, he had just come back from his out-of-body experience, and he's starting to do a video log, and he turns to the scientist there and says, "Do I have to do it now? I really need to get some sleep." And she goes, "No, do it now while it's fresh." She was tying some things together there. It was something he had to do that he didn't want to do. But, it was, look, you got back from this exciting experience. That was the thing that you wanted to do. Now the thing you need to do is make your record. So, go forward.
Possibly the way to do it, in that exact example that I gave there, is that before you stop for coffee, then you write up your notes, and then you reward yourself by taking the coffee break. So that then because then the payoff is that you feel more relaxed, because you're like, okay, now that's completely done and dusted, that little segment of work. I don't have to remember any of the bits that are floating around, any of the numbers or the sequence of what I did. Now I can go and properly relax, and then you'll get the you get used to that payoff, that feeling of now I can relax and have the coffee rather than feeling guilty about it, and so that's more likely to form the habit.
Yeah, that's it. What you're doing then is you're saying, I'm going to do something that I don't want to do, but I'm going to get an immediate reward for it.
Yeah.
So, it's like after I take my notes, I get to go have a coffee. Excellent. Okay, another thing you can do is join a culture where whatever your desired behavior is normal behavior. So, just looking outside of the lab, I would say things like, you could join a book club. Well, that'll get you to read. You could join a cycling class. Well, now you got to show up on time to take your spin class with everybody.
Join journal club. Join journal club. Make sure you get to the journal club, and then you get into the habit of you should be in that habit anyway, but it helps you to form the skills around reading and analysing papers, and it's there. Normally, most places have a journal club. They have a seminar program. Just use those as structure to help yourself stay in the orbit of the science that you need to stay in the orbit of.
Well, that's a great idea. I just learned something. I didn't know there was such a thing. So this is why Nick is on the podcast.
The small pieces, the 1%.
He knows the stuff that actually happens in the lab. So no, that's great. That's great. Okay, so the fourth or the third thing to do then is make it easy. So you want to reduce the friction. That is, so for instance, let's say you decide you want to start running. Well, buy some running shoes that you just love. Running shoes that you will be excited to put on. It's like, oh man, and it won't hurt if they're expensive. It's like, man, I get to put on those $200 running shoes today. I'm not advocating being materialistic here, but I'm pointing out that if it's something you find valuable, something that you will have a positive connection to, it'll make it easier. And just again, have stuff ready to go. If you want to, do more cooking at home, well, get yourself a nice set of knives that you'll be excited to work with, and they're there instead of that one dull, rusty knife that's in the bottom of the drawer that you gotta dig out and and then you hate working with. Make it something you will really enjoy, and that makes it easier. And then prime the environment. Make everything around you supportive of this new habit you want to have. So if you want to do a better job of keeping up on journals, we'll have those journals in a place that's convenient to read them. And whether that's on your desk or at home next to your easy chair or right next to the commode, I don't know, whatever works for you.
Well, we used to have a thing in the last company I worked for where we would encourage each other to kind of make a pile of papers that we wanted to read, and just have them sitting there so that when you have something like a centrifugation step where you're waiting for 2 minutes for the thing to work, then you just pick up the paper and start skimming, and just it's not the same as getting down deep in the paper, but it just keeps it flowing, so that you just fill up those little gaps with with reading some literature. And that's a bit double-sided, because sometimes those 2 minute gaps are just a good way to let your head clear and things. But I always find that a useful way to just have a pile of papers that is kind of like, okay, now just grab, easy to go and read it when you have a few minutes.
Right, and sometimes there are things that you need to keep up with that are 2-minute tasks, that they're not that hard to do. There are other things like, man, I'm gonna need a half hour to really dig into this. Well, you'll plan each of those separately, and if you have the quick and easy tasks right there available to you when you have those gaps of time, then that makes it a lot easier for you. When it comes to a longer task, what you need to do there is give yourself some carved out time. Like, I'm not going to get interrupted for the next half hour. I'm not answering email right now. Maybe you've stepped away from your desk. You've gone somewhere else so that you can have some uninterrupted time. That's another way to make that kind of thing easier for you. So the fourth part, and to me this is the best part, is making it satisfying. So take some small step that will give you an immediate payoff. In other words, be happy with incremental success. So if you are saying, I have to get up and run today, I'm going to hate this, it's going to be awful. Well, make a deal with yourself. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get dressed to run. And whether or not I run after that, I'm not worrying about it. My deal with myself is I'm going to get dressed to run. And then maybe the next day, it's my deal is I'm going to get dressed to run, and I'm going to step out into the street. Maybe the deal next day is I'm going to get dressed to run, step out into the street, and I'm going to run to the end of the block. Give yourself a reward of as simple as a reward of approval for taking a step in the right direction. You don't have to say, look, I promised myself I was going to run 3 miles a day, and you're going to hate yourself until you hit the 3-mile mark. No, that makes it miserable for you. Reward yourself steps along the way. Give yourself the satisfaction of of recognizing I'm going in the right direction. And it's not just about the final step, that final step in the 3 mile mark. No, it's every step is good.
So I have an anecdote of something of a running specific. So it's not lab specific. It's a running specific anecdote of I've been running for like 20 years or something like that, and but never really. I always kind of went in peaks and troughs and never really just got into a regular, satisfying running schedule. It's always a struggle. And I recently got a coach who set up a structure for me to run, and it's really hit the spot. And the bottom line of why it's hit the spot is because I do a lot of much more slow running than I did before. It's the art of slowing down, because as we talked about in the previous episode, it's because what I tended to do was think of, I have to, when I do a run, I need to really push myself, and otherwise there's no point. And it's not that at all, because now if you throttle it back and sometimes do faster runs, but the most of what you do is a slower run, then that still builds your fitness. It actually builds your aerobic fitness more than your anaerobic fitness. But also, just as importantly, it feels easier and it feels much more enjoyable. And so you can actually listen to like an audiobook or something like that without feeling that kind of panic you feel when you're pushing yourself to the max. You can enjoy the scenery or whatever. So yeah, that's definitely a thing of, for me, a way that makes it attractive and easy, because I'm not kind of dreading the next training session, and I'm also just enjoying the training session when it comes.
Right. And this is true of anything that you're doing in your life. If you're going just flat out, pedal to the metal all the time, life is not good. You won't enjoy your life. You won't enjoy your work. You won't feel satisfied. You got to go at a pace that is sustainable. And, so I love that as a metaphor for this. Now, I just mentioned that one of the things you can do to make it satisfying is to give yourself approval for incremental steps, but you can go further than that. You can give yourself rewards for doing good things. So when you do finish that, you've been giving yourself approval along the way on your run, but when you do finish your 3 miles, give yourself a reward. Now, obviously, make your rewards ones that aren't counterproductive to your new habit. So, if you're developing your ability to exercise, the answer is and now I get to have a candy bar. Make it something a little better. Like, now I'm going to make a fruit smoothie. That'll be really tasty. If you're in the lab, I'm certain in the lab that cleanliness is terribly important in many cases. Well, if you need to develop habits to make sure things are pristinely clean, work on that, and then when things are clean, you have the satisfaction of seeing it done. But that is an opportunity to then reward yourself. Like, okay, I really, I've got this place top shelf, and now I'm gonna reward myself by I'm gonna look into say a journal I've been wanting to read, or I'm gonna take a break now. I'm gonna have a cup of coffee. I'm gonna have a cup of tea. Whatever floats your boat there. Find a reward that matters to you. Now, and I'll add another little thing in here, and this is kind of talking about breaking bad habits, but it's good because it's so tightly tied. You can also reward yourself for not doing something bad. If you found yourself feeling like, I'm going to leave that mess for somebody else to clean up, and you go, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll take care of it. And you take care of it, reward yourself for that. Give your, more than just a pat on the back. Like, you actually do deserve something. When you saw a bad habit coming, like, man, I've always been leaving a mess and I've been getting chastised from my colleagues and even my boss about this. Well, this time I didn't do it. And I didn't, and if you get it in your head, I didn't do it because I didn't want to be hassled by them. I did it because I know it's the right thing to do, and I feel good about that, and therefore now I will reward myself. And you know what rewards you like, so go for those.
It's interesting when you strip it right back that what we're really doing here is training is that we follow the dopamine or whatever. We follow whether it's a good thing that we do or a bad thing that we do, we generally do it because it makes us feel good.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
so what you're trying, and as you said, the bad thing generally makes you feel good in the moment, and the good things are often a bit more delayed. But what you're talking about is putting some dopamine into the instant dopamine into the doing the good thing, like consciously making yourself feel good about going to the gym even though it hurts, so that you then you'll follow as the animal part of you will follow the dopamine. So that's or at least it'll follow the feel good part anyway, and that's what we're doing here. Is we're setting up a system where we train ourselves to do good things by making them feel good and making the bad things either more difficult to do or they start feeling bad.
So one of the things that you're mentioning here, and I love the idea of get yourself a dopamine hit. Let's talk about breaking bad habits, and one of the ways you can do this is let's keep you from getting that cortisol hit of feeling bad. When you've left something half done, it's coming back to bite you, and you have that moment of that pain, that strain, but for whatever reason, you don't have the habit of doing what you should do in that moment. And so we're going to talk about how to break a bad habit. And it's going to be the opposite of the 4 things that you do to make a good habit. Remember, making a good habit is you make it obvious, you make it attractive, you make it easy, and you make it satisfying. Well, when it comes to breaking a bad habit, what you want to do is you want to make it invisible, you want to make it unappealing, you want to make it hard, and you want to make it unsatisfying. So, if you want to make something invisible, radically change your environment. In other words, if you want to stop eating junk food, throw away all the junk food. I mean radical change, not just like, okay, when I finally finish this bag of potato chips, I won't get another one. No, take that half full bag of potato chips, mash it up and stuff it in the trash can. Radically change your environment. Feel that you're like, no, I will do this no more. I'm done with it. And, anything that's drawing you away to something negative that you don't want to do. So, if you're finding that I get caught up every day I come in and the first thing I do is I sit down to email, and then 2 hours later I look up and nothing started, and how did this happen to me? And okay, then make it invisible. Have that, if you've got a laptop, have the screen closed. You don't see it. Don't have your email application open on your main screen where you can't help but keep noticing, there's another email, there's a new one came in. Turn off the notifications or put down the phone, or turn off the sound on the phone so you don't hear it. Make it invisible. This is all this stuff, all these tools that we use, they are our environment. It's the stuff we have to change, and we think that we have to do this way. You don't. You do not have to answer every phone call that comes in when it rings. You don't have to answer every email in the next 30 seconds. You just don't. So stop making those assumptions about this stuff. Now, one of the reasons that you're making those assumptions, and you got to look at this like, why? Why do I feel like I have to answer the phone? You got to watch for what emotions are cueing this trigger. When a phone rings, do you feel fear? Do you feel embarrassment? Do you feel, insignificant? Like, I'm just an underling that has to jump when I'm told to jump. Watch for what emotions are cueing these things. Because oftentimes, all you have to do is shine a light on that. When you realize, I feel afraid every time I see an email notification. Well, that's not. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going. There's no reason for me to be afraid every time an email comes in. Just recognizing that I never noticed it before. I was just having this feeling. Well, when you have those feelings that give you that cortisol hit, your body and mind are going to do what they're supposed to do. It's like, hey, this is a fight or flight situation. I need to do something. Whereas if you can if you can decouple that stuff and recognize an emotion that comes up, and before you act on it, go, oh, I feel pressured. I'm like, wait a minute, it's just an email. I'm okay, or it's the phone is ringing. It's like, I don't even recognize this number. I don't have to answer it. So don't worry about it, and realize too that if an important call comes in, they're going to leave a message, and you can listen to the message right away, and then you can make an actual choice. Do I call back now or not? Because they don't know whether or not you heard the message. All they know is you weren't able to answer the phone at the time. And I don't care if it's your boss. I don't care if it's your spouse. Whatever's going on with that. Often you can get that, and it's going to be like, oh, hey, I was just checking in on this, that, or the other thing. Or give me a call when you have a chance, when you got a free time. And you realized, wow, I didn't actually have free time now. They weren't calling me to demand my time at this moment. They were just informing me that they would like to have a future conversation. Well, make that a possibility in your world. When you make it impossible for that to happen, and we've all done this. We've had people we've called, and they pick up the phone, and hi, how you doing? I was wondering if we could talk about X. Well, I'm in the middle of something right now. Then why did you answer the phone? Let's be leaders on this, and not be automatically reactive to everything that happens around us. We are humans. We are masters of our universe here. We can actually be in charge of some things, and you can certainly be in charge of yourself in that regard. Another thing you can do is look for things that are steering you wrong. So, we've kind of touched on that a bit, but if there are things that are triggering your bad behaviors, watch for those things. So, for instance, we've been using the analogy of keeping the lab clean. And why do you leave stuff to be done? Oh, because I got to get to the next project. And, so we focused on something else. It's like, well, don't schedule your time in such a way that you don't have proper time for setup, action, tear down. You have to have them all. We often look at the task and we only think about the action, but there's setup and there's tear down for a lot of things. And that could be like, let's say you have to write something. Let's say you need to write a paper. Well, the writing itself is the action, but there's setup. Well, maybe some things you need to gather together, information you're going to need. You need to take a breath so you can get your head into this. And then the same thing's going to have to happen afterward. There's stuff to put away. There's, I got to turn my head off about this and let it go. I finished it. It's done. And now I can switch back to another task. Start cutting yourself that slack, and watch for those opportunities where you've allowed things to steer you off in other directions.
It's the art of going slow again, isn't it? Setting up
Yeah, it is.
Not trying to rush through things. It's a counterproductive to do that. You think it'll save you time, but it doesn't. It just adds more stress, and it reduces the effectiveness of what you do, or the success of what you do.
Yeah, we've all heard the adage that there's never time to do it right, but there's always time to do it over. What a terrible way to live. If you have not been enjoying your work and your career, I promise you've been living that. Stop that. Start instead, do it right the first time. And if it can't be done right the first time, speak up. Oftentimes, the only reason you haven't been given the proper resources and the proper schedule is because you didn't say anything at the time when you saw that it was a problem. And those who gave the assignment to you weren't aware. Well, make them aware. Make it possible. Have conversations with people. Communicate.
It's again from that the episode 12, I think, which was the art of going slow, and the idea behind that is that by going more slowly but being more focused, then you will actually end up getting more done than you will if you're rushing.
Yep, it's the tortoise and the hare thing. Slow and steady wins the race. So here's another thing to think about. A lot of times with bad habits, what we try to do is we try to willpower our way out of them. We try to make self-control the way that we stop things. Well, self-control is a fine and admirable thing, but it is a short-term strategy. It is not a long-term strategy. If you think the way you're going to beat your bad habit is by self-control, you've already lost. So keep this other stuff in mind. Get it invisible first, and then you were going to find it's going to be a lot easier. Now, the next thing is to make whatever your bad habit is unappealing. And I'm going to give you a story from my own life about this. When I was a boy, my parents both smoked cigarettes, and my dad decided to quit, and he quit cold turkey, and it was tough for him. It was hard, but he did, and he was highly motivated. He really, really, really wanted to quit smoking. My mother, however, was not particularly excited to join him in this. So one evening after dinner, the deal that my sister and I had is that each of us traded off drying dishes as mom was washing dishes, day after day. So it was my day to dry dishes. So I'm in the kitchen, my mom's washing the dishes, and I'm drying the dishes. And then I look over, and my dad, he's just kind of leaned up against the door jamb with his legs crossed, and he just has this cigarette just hanging out of the corner of his mouth with the stupidest look on his face. And he looked over at my mother, and we both turned and I literally did a double take. I saw it once, I turned away, and I had to turn back because I couldn't believe it, because I knew how militant he had been about this. And he looked at my mother, and she looked at him, and he said, "This is how stupid you look." And he walked off. And that was it. Mom quit after that. And the habit had become unappealing to her. This is part of the motivation sometimes. You develop habits because you do want to please other people. And often you can use that as a lever. So if something is unappealing to you, or if it's unappealing to people that you care about, you're going to have an easier time breaking that habit. Next thing, making it hard. So increase the friction. That is, make whatever this bad habit it is hard. So let's say that you're eating way too much ice cream. So here's the deal. You change how you eat ice cream. In the past, you grabbed that half gallon out of the freezer and a spoon, and you sat down in the easy chair, and you turned on, Comedy Central. And you ate until you decided you didn't want to eat anymore. Now, from now on, if you want ice cream, you get out a small bowl, you get out the half gallon of ice cream, you get out a spoon, you scoop a small amount into the small bowl, you put the ice cream away. Now go over to the Barca Lounger with your small bowl and eat your ice cream. If you want more, that's fine. Put that dish in the dishwasher, get out another small dish, get out the ice cream, get out another small spoon. Make yourself go through a bunch of motions, and it's going to help you be more aware of what you're doing. So now, instead of just going, wow, I ate 2/3 of this half a gallon of ice cream in one sitting without even noticing, now I was like, after 2 bowls, when it comes time for a 3rd bowl, you're going, you know what, I am not going to bother. and it slows you down on the bad habit. And another thing you can do is remember we talked about choices versus decisions? Well, whether or not you're going to have ice cream tonight is a choice. But only allow that choice under predetermined conditions. That is, the only time I'm going to have ice cream is if I've had a proper meal that included a vegetable and included a fruit and, whatever standard you set. And if all I did was sit down and have a cheeseburger, no ice cream. No, not going to happen. I didn't meet the predetermined conditions that mean I can have ice cream. I think about the Pink Floyd song, eat your meat, how can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? Yes. But, it's the same thing, again, if you're in the lab, if you've had a bad habit there, something that, you haven't done properly, well, make it harder to make that mistake. Make it add more conditions before you're allowed to make that mistake. And what this does for you too is that, you don't have to be perfect. It says, okay, look, I know I'd like to improve this but just going cold turkey will be too hard on me. So I'm just going to make it. I got to jump through some hoops before I can goof up, and that again, that'll help you break the habit. And then finally, make it unsatisfying, so that it's if you can hide your failures, I say in quotes, that's not unsatisfying. But if you have made a deal with somebody else, if you have an accountability partner for whatever it is you're trying to do, if you said, okay, I am going to make sure that I read 3 papers every week, well, have an accountability partner who's also made whatever they're going to commit to. It doesn't have to be the same thing. They might commit to 1 paper a week. Doesn't matter. They might commit to 10 and you're doing 3. But at the end of the week, you got to check in with each other and go, how'd you do? And you have to admit, well, I said I'd do 3, I only did 2. And they go, well, I said I'd do 10, I did 11. In your face. Again, that's not a fun experience, but you're making it unsatisfying for yourself. And you'll know that's coming too. It's like, you know what? I am not gonna let him get his smug face out because I didn't meet my goal. I'm gonna meet my goal. Another thing you can do, you don't necessarily need a specific partner, but you vocalize your new regime so that it's publicly noticed when you don't walk the line. So you say, I am never, ever going to leave this station a mess again. I am, from now on, the way you'll know I had used this station is because it's pristinely ready for the next person. And you just spread it out to the world and let people notice. And again, you're making it unsatisfying if you don't, because now you've said that and you're like, oh man, I don't want to take this 15 minutes that's going to do this. I got this other stuff I want to do, but I really don't want everybody to look at me and go, yeah, right, big mouth, shooting it off again. So now you'll know. So there's a resource that we can recommend about all of this, about developing great habits. And believe me, we have only scratched the surface. There's so much more that we could say about this. But it's a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. It's a great read and very practical. If you're somebody that really likes to be rational, this book is going to speak to you. Now, if you're somebody that's more creative, this book is still going to speak to you. It's someone who's really spent a lot of time thinking about this and has lived it. He's made sure to have the experience of developing good habits and have the experience of getting rid of bad habits. And he has an interesting personal story that's compelling too. So again, just something you might enjoy, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I've read that book as well. It's highly recommended from my side as well.
So that's pretty much everything I've got. Nick, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of sum up by saying, for me, and it might just be where I personally am just now, but what's really resonating with me about this is this 1% a day thing. In that all the things that you've read out, okay, so you've or that you've discussed today, how to form a good habit by making the change obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. Now, how to break a bad habit, on the other hand, by making it invisible, make it unappealing, making it hard, making it unsatisfying. Those are all different ways you can approach the habits that you identify that you want to form or break, but you don't have to do it all in one go. You can just you just add 1% on every day, and that will compound. And so it's using that framework that you have set out there, but just as a way to just focus on a little bit every day, a little bit of improvement every day, rather than I want to be able to run a marathon tomorrow, so I'm going to I'll be aiming for 13 miles tomorrow when I haven't run in a year or something like that. It's just being patient and just aiming, keeping your vector in the right direction, and just using these possibilities as ways to finding different ways to keep stomping down the bad habits and keep building up the good habits.
Yeah, and we're not saying you have to use all of these tactics at once. You could use one tactic and it may be enough. If it's not enough, fine, add another one or two. Just do it until it works, and you'll get to the point where you'll recognize. I'll know. Okay, this habit here, I'm going to have to throw everything I have got at it. And other ones is like, okay, well, I've just been getting lazy and slack about something. I'm gonna make this a little hard to do, and I'm sure that'll be enough. The same thing about good habits. You can tell when you're on the precipice. When I'm right there, it's like, you know what? I've been running 3 miles 3 times a week. I'm going to sign up for the 10K run because I can run 10K. I can do that. Even though you've been running half that. So, watch and see how much do I need to devote to developing this new habit or breaking this bad habit, and you'll know. You'll get good at it.
It's all about the dopamine, so just make it relaxed and make it
Dopamine's so much better than cortisol. Oh yeah.
Okay, let's wrap that up there then, Ken. I think I didn't have much to contribute there actually, a couple of bits and pieces, but I think you absolutely nailed it. I was really that was very timely for me, that one, I think.
Excellent. Well, and you had some specifics about the lab that I didn't have. So, that's what this is for. This is to help scientists in the lab.
Definitely. Okay, so thanks to everyone for sticking in, and hopefully that gave you some things that you can take away. We will, of course, be talking about this episode and the content of this episode and every other episode that we cover in the Facebook group, which is at facebook.com/The Happy Scientist Club, all one word. We'll see you in there if you found this useful, and we'll be posting exercises, discussions, and things in there that will help you to get to grips and break down some of these concepts. If you want to get the link for the Atomic Habits book and anything else that we covered in this episode, you can find the show notes, which contain all of that, at bitesizebio.com/The Happy Scientist, which is all one word, and look for episode 13, which is this one, and all of those details will be in the show notes. And finally, if you are enjoying this and you haven't done so already, go back and listen to episodes 1 to 9 of this podcast, in which Ken and I discuss some of the fundamental concepts that will provide you with a framework that we will refer to throughout these episodes, and those are the concepts of the principles of human needs, core mindsets, and charisma factors. Again, those are discussed in episodes 1 to 9 of this podcast. So again, thank you for joining us. Thanks, Ken, for the great content, and we'll see you in the next episode.
All right, see you next time.
The Happy Scientist is brought to you by Bitesize Bio, your mentor in the lab. Bitesize Bio features thousands of articles and webinars contributed by hundreds of PhD scientists and scientific companies who freely offer their hard-won wisdom and solutions to the Bitesize Bio community.